Autism is a puzzling neurological disability. Individuals affected by autism live in a world where they are constantly assaulted by an overload of sensory information. What goes virtually unnoticed to a typical individual is magnified and exaggerated for the individual with autism. An everyday experience like going to the grocery store or shopping mall becomes a frightening and disturbing experience where the sights and sounds become overwhelming and often result in an emotional meltdown. Onlookers shake their head or stare, presumably wondering why that child or his parents cannot control what is happening.
Six, 7, 8, 9.
Take my hand.
I'm not naughty. I'm autistic. And I just get too much information.
As this child explained, "I'm not naughty, I'm autistic, and I just get too much information." Perhaps you've been in a public place and observed a frustrated parent trying to soothe a screaming, flailing child. Did you shake your head in disgust and think, "What a brat," or something along those lines? With the current rate of autism and other related disabilities, it is likely that what you observed was an autistic child on sensory overload having a meltdown. Awareness of this puzzling disorder is important so that compassion and understanding can be offered.
On March 27, 2014, the CDC released new data on the prevalence of autism in the United States. This surveillance study identified 1 in 68 children as having autism spectrum disorder. This disorder is 5 times more common in boys. ASD is estimated to affect more than 2 million individuals in the US and tens of millions worldwide. About 1% of the world population has autism spectrum disorder. Some of the issues associated with this epidemic include: first, early diagnosis and intervention. Autism can be reliably diagnosed by age 2, with earlier diagnosis affording greater opportunities for intervention that supports healthy development and improves function and quality of life. Second, funding for therapies and education in order to minimize the impact of the disorder as the affected individuals age. Third, training for police and first responders because autistic individuals do not react like their typically functioning peers in emergency situations. And finally, community support for socialization and employment.
The Autism Society of Greater Orlando is a community-based organization that raises awareness of autism spectrum disorders and provides services and support for families that are affected by ASD. Among the services provided by ASGO are law enforcement training, social skills groups for all ages of individuals on the spectrum, and community events that are designed to raise awareness of autism. We volunteered to work with ASGO for their annual fundraising walk this month. Corporate sponsors and vendors providing services to autistic individuals attend the walk and answer questions about what they have to offer. This year's event at the Orlando Science Center drew hundreds from the autism community, and they raised in excess of $60,000, which ASGO uses for their services in the Greater Orlando area. Attending a gathering which includes hundreds of families with autistic children and young adults can be intimidating. However, it is a very effective way to observe the many similarities and differences in the challenges these families face. it would be difficult to not experience compassion and empathy for the daily struggles of not just the autistic individuals, but their families and caregivers as well. The joy expressed by many of these individuals was contagious because of their childlike and uninhibited view of life. There is much laughter and fun among those on the spectrum, especially when presented with common interests. Of course, the sensory issues tend to present a challenge for some, especially in a large group setting. One particular girl who always carries her stuffed dinosaur never seems to tire of sharing her love for Sarah. Autism events tend to build community awareness and empathy for others who are differently abled. Because of the social changes inherent in autism spectrum disorders, individuals on the spectrum tend to become isolated, especially as they age past their school years. Research has shown and many high-functioning autistic individuals have confirmed that the need for friendship and affirmation is just as present as for their typical peers. Creating occasions for socialization helps reduce isolation and increases the general well-being of those in the autistic community.
It isn't always necessary to have someone on the spectrum in your family in order for you to make a difference in the ASD community. Organizations like ASGO always welcome volunteers. Also, working with the school system is another great way to get involved. At the very least, becoming better educated on the signs of autism and showing compassion when you encounter those directly affected by ASD is an effective way to make a positive impact in the autism community. Now we challenge you to go out and not only spread awareness, but treat others with kindness, especially those who may be different.